Let's start by exploring Africa's water basins. Which ones are they? Where are they, region by region?
I actually have a map online, and I'm going to defer to the map because off the top of my head I can only picture the ones where I've worked. So I know in southern Africa, all the SADC regions, Limpopo, Orange. I don't think I'm wrong in saying there's 40-something international basins. Of course, the big ones, the Nile is the one that everybody knows, Zambezi. But most of the continent is covered with international basins.
That said, let's talk about the politics of water in Africa.
Yeah, so the politics are pretty much the same everywhere. As you have countries trying to share basins. The Nile, of course, 10 and now soon to be 11 countries that share the basin. All the SADC rivers, all the upstream users wanting to use more water, while the downstream users, Mozambique, Egypt, wanting to protect the water that they have. Some places, water and development are integrally related. Angola can't develop until their mines are cleared, related to access to water. So it's just integrally tied to almost all of the complex politics of the continent.
Water is a catalyst for regional strife in many countries. Where are the most serious cases in Africa, and what causes them?
Yeah, so I think the strife generally is either different countries or more often different sectors competing for the same resource. So if you look at any water resource, any basin, populations are growing, environmental degradation's increasing, climate change is making all of it worse, industrialization is adding new pollution to the streams. So all of this creates stress in a system, on the environmental system, but also on the human system. And so the people who have rights to water, who have traditional uses to water, want to protect those uses. And that's the basis of most conflict.
You mentioned the Nile Basin, basically coming from Egypt all the way down to East African countries, and there's been a lot of conflict right there. Do you think there's a need to renegotiate colonial treaties which seemingly give advantage of the Nile's control mainly to Egypt?
Yeah, not control, I wouldn't say, because the water flows the opposite. It comes from Ethiopia, from eastern Africa to Egypt. And I think that's precisely what Egypt's concerned about, is if there's new development upstream, will they still continue to retain access to the water that their whole society is, their whole culture, their whole history is based on. So I think it's not a question of renegotiating or not. I think it's a question of couching the conversation in a way that it's in everybody's interest to come to an agreement. So, and I think that's the way things were moving for a long time. The Nile Basin Initiative trying to work a development plan that worked not just on water, but on road networks, on power generation, on trying to use the river as a catalyst for regional development, to the point where focusing on the amount of water isn't the most important thing.
What do you think about the Nile Basin Initiative? Do you think they're making progress? What needs to be done to just push that process forward between countries?
So I think there's been huge progress. I mean, if we remember in the early 90s, Ethiopia and Egypt were talking about going to war over water, and now they're within sentences of signing a comprehensive agreement. That's huge progress in and of itself. I think the fact that the upper riparians have already signed a compact is progress, that they're thinking about regional development. I think now there's going to be a bit of a breather while the situation in Sudan and the situation in Ethiopia play themselves out, and we see what that part of the basin looks like. One of the interesting things about that change is that occasionally in the rest of the world, major political changes actually have resulted in new water sharing agreements. So on the Ganges, for years and years, Bangladesh and India wouldn't sign. And then there was a new election in Bangladesh, and the new government made it a point to focus on regional collaboration. And within a month of the election, they signed a treaty. It could well be that that's one of the results to come out of Egypt and Sudan.
Is there anything unique about water conflict issues in Africa?
As compared to the rest of the world?
Yes.
No, I think the problems are universal. There's too little water for too many needs. I think there's problems here all converge in a way. Here in South Africa, for example, we heard about acid mine drainage as an issue. We hear about new pharmaceuticals that are in the water supply. Climate change is going to play out in southern Africa more so than other parts of the world. I think it's not different. I think some parts are have a harder time. But the other thing I think unique, at least the Africa that I've been exposed to, is the kind of tenor of dialogue. People are willing to talk. People are willing to come to agreements all over the continent. That's happened. And we look at, for example, the South African water law is unique in the world in guaranteeing the human right to water, guaranteeing in-stream flows. These are things that the rest of the world needs to learn from Africa.
What risk does Africa face in the future if, the status quo as far as water conflicts are concerned remains?
I think if it's like anywhere else in the world, if the problems aren't addressed in a comprehensive and equitable way, the only course is death, destruction, and suffering. I think that's enough to know to induce people to come to the table, and I think it is.
What does Africa need to do to resolve water conflict within its borders?
I think part of it is just to focus on the issue, is to remember the healing nature of water, to remember the unifying nature of water, to notice how it has the capacity to bring groups of stakeholders into a room or groups of countries into a room who wouldn't necessarily talk to each other, and gives us a language with which to talk about our shared future. I've seen that happen all over the continent, and I'm confident that it'll continue to happen.
Thank you very much, Dr. Eruwo, for your time.
Pleasure. Thank you.